You ever feel like you're working your ass off, checking all the boxes, collecting degrees, titles, the to-do list, but still wondering why it doesn't feel right? Same. In this episode, I am bringing you the powerhouse herself, Dr. LaChelle Wieme, a former anesthesiologist turned mindset and energy coach. She traded her hustle culture for a life that actually makes sense. We're talking ADHD brains, burnout recovery, and why your thoughts might be the real reason your sales calls feel like a disaster. She breaks down the actual brain science behind confidence, the law of vibration, no fluff, real science, and how she uses God, gut, and quantum physics to help high achievers stop spiraling and start rising. You're not broken, you're just out of alignment. And by the end of this episode, you'll know exactly how to fix it. Welcome back to the ADHD CEO. So excited because today we have an absolutely amazing guest joining us. And I'm really excited. I'm going to let her introduce herself in just a second. But she has transitioned from a 20-year career in anesthesia to a coaching business and has had a lot of pivotal moments up to that point. And I'm really excited for her to share a lot of that with you today. And as ADHD entrepreneurs, it's very easy for us to get stuck in very specific ways of us regulating and daily life in general. So I am so excited to introduce LaChelle. She is going to give you absolutely incredible information today. She's got a very unique way that she coaches with Life by Design. And I'm going to let her explain all of that. But really briefly, she and I met in a coaching program that we were both in, high-level coaching program. And we actually got to go to Cabo together. Yes. So I've met her in person and got to kind of sort of vacay, I guess you could say. It was a retreat for business owners, but really enjoyed just your presence and the calm that you bring, because as an ADHD person, I am not usually calm. I'm pretty high strung all the time. And I'm telling you, just being in her physical presence, it was like a calm and a rationale that I cannot bring. So I love that you, not only do you have that presence, but that you share that gift with Life by Design and with other business owners online now. So before I just spiral off and start talking about random things in Cabo, tell us a little bit about you and what pivotal moment kind of led you to make such a significant shift in your life.
Yeah, no, totally. I love that so much. Okay, so yeah, Alyece, I'm going to diverge this conversation briefly and just say that when we met in Cabo, I definitely sensed your beautiful, confident energy. That's one of the things. So if you guys have not had a chance to meet Alyece in person, she is a powerhouse of energy, and she wants to draw you into all of her amazingness. And so I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
And I feel like, one of the reasons that you and I click so well is the same reason that I click really well with one of my partners, Katie, is that you bring in this really cool, commanding masculine energy.
Yeah.
And I really bring in more of the feminine energy. And as we know in metaphysics, you have to have masculine and feminine both in order to produce success. And so even though I might have more of this feminine energy with me, I have to channel my masculine in order to get it done. And I believe that you do the same, which is really fun.
Yes, thank you.
You were asking me about me and kind of what the heck all, transpired with this crazy journey of mine. I'm just going to tell you guys that I loved my career in anesthesia. And in fact, I worked my ass off to get where I was, a bachelor's in nursing, master's in anesthesia, doctorate in anesthesia, and was finding myself in the highlight of my career, teaching for the best anesthesia program in the world, honestly. And I still felt like something was missing. And I constantly was pushing. I was constantly proving to myself what I was capable of. I was checking off the next degree. I was checking off the next job title. I was checking off the next award. All the things, but never ever felt like it was good enough. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
At the same time, I had this beautiful family that I had prayed for that I had a hard time conceiving. And I was like, this doesn't feel right. But I couldn't put my finger on it, if that makes any sense, right? And so what happened was I was introduced to this crazy world of online business. And I actually started with network marketing of all things. And I know you and I both have this love for that channel. And I was introduced to this company, and this is what's hilarious, you guys, is that you know that it's divinely orchestrated because of how unbelievably wackadoo this was. Like, I started a skincare business, and I wasn't even washing my face.
Yes. Yes, I can relate. I can relate.
So I feel like it was like I was curious about it, and it felt like a new fun challenge. And I was just like, I'm gonna give it a try. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. So that's really where like God just kept like nudging at me. And what happened was it was that realization of what was missing that I couldn't put my finger on before. You see, the thing is that I wanted to find a life with that I can control the and life. It's this life of being challenged and fulfilled and making a difference in the world and doing it on my terms, and having the freedom to be the mom and the wife that I wanted to be, and to be able to travel the world on my terms, right? And I didn't even know that that existed because I was literally the mom that like tore into the daycare center at 5:59, hoping I wasn't going to get charged, for being late.
Yeah, same.
And like I had this like internal drive of like proving to myself what I was capable of, but it was at the expense of other things that mattered to me. And I had this conflict of core values. And honestly, entrepreneurship like opened my eyes to like, holy shit, like it's possible to have both.
Yeah.
And the thing though is that the bar from where I was to where I wanted to be was really, really wide. And when I started my business, I had maybe 200 friends on Facebook. I was deathly afraid of attention. God forbid somebody sees me and judges me and rejects me. And so I had, no following. I only posted the occasional Toby Mac quote that I shared from a friend, and I had to like really force myself out of my comfort zone to learn who I was and what I was capable of and what I could do. And once I started to dive into like me, I started to discover that I was capable of so much more than I'd ever given myself credit for, and I could do it on my terms. And that's kind of really what led me down this whole crazy journey. And yeah, in 2022, I got brave enough to step away from my full-time career and really focus on all the things that set my soul on fire. And I love helping other people figure out how to do the same.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So that actually leads me to my next question, because your brand emphasizes life by design, but what does that mean to you personally? I mean, you explained to us, kind of how you led to that, but how did you come to embrace that philosophy?
Yeah, so I'm going to just say that the front of that whole like brand is the I am life by design. And I'm just going to point that out real quickly, you guys, because there is this beautiful law in universal law called the law of assumption that says that when we can act as if we are already her, we draw into our life the experiences that we want because our identity in our brain is already her. And so this I am is so important. And so if I were to use the example of an affirmation right now, let's just use worthiness because I think all of us can at some point relate to that, okay?
Yeah.
So if I say, and I'm going to emphasize the words in different ways, okay? So if I say am worthy, awesome. If I say I am worthy, great. But if I say I am worthy, there's a sense of being in that transmutes the energy within me to create her. Okay?
Yes.
So when I can acknowledge that I am capable of creating my life by design, that means that not only am I not subject to life, I am not subject to the circumstances, the people, the things that I feel are out of my control, that I get to create my life by design, that life is happening for me if I'm willing to accept it, and that it can be my design. It does not have to be what my parents expected me to be. It does not mean that, I'm going to say my husband. I love my husband. He is a beautiful balance, but God forbid he takes a risk, right? Like I love him to death.
Yeah.
But I don't want to think that any of us are subject to, like, my husband doesn't get it, or my husband doesn't want me to quit my job, or I'm not smart enough for this, or blah, blah, blah. Like, it's really just accepting and acknowledging that once we acknowledge that we get to create this, that I can design the life that I want, And there are ways in which we can do that that allow us to live the life that is a representation of our fullest capacity, to know that at the end of our life, we got to hear, well done, good faithful servant, because we used all of our gifting. We allowed the desires and the dreams inside of us to be the guide to draw us into this bigger, beautiful life of impact and abundance. And that as long as we're willing to accept that desire and make decisions and act on those, that we can create this amazing life that's beyond anything we thought was possible.
Yes, so powerful. And I love, there's so many things that you just said, because what I heard was like that emphasis of I am, I am, and then get to, right? And that is something that I really had to learn in a long process when I started with entrepreneurship, right? Because I put a lot of pressure on myself when I first started to have this idea of I have to perform, I have to perform, I have to perform, because it's not a consistent every 2-week check, you know? So it's like, I have to perform. And it was a lot of pressure that caused overwhelm and burnout for me in the very beginning, rather than, you know, having a mindset of I get to do this. I get to be here for my children. I get to choose what my day looks like. I get to. And so that was definitely something I had to learn very early on. And so that's incredibly powerful, incredibly powerful. So I love that, just from us working together and, you know, in your Spiral Up program, and we'll definitely talk more about that, and just the events we've done together and things, has such a mindset and such a clarity. And then not only to serve others in a very unique way, but then also balancing that motherhood and that entrepreneurship. So, you know, tell me a little bit about your very unique way of coaching, because it includes a lot of things we as entrepreneurs would not think we should include.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spoil any details. I want you to explain it, because I just destroy it, honestly. But it's very unique, and I think it has so much to do with, you know, your journey, but also in your ability to be able to see in others what they're not able to see.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I think that that's been the talent and the gifting that I've acknowledged, is that I can pick up on people's roadblocks and their blind spots, and I help them figure out how to get past them, through them, over them, whatever it is. Like, there are no limits, but the limits we put on ourselves. And I'm going to go back to something that you said that stood out to me, is that, like, I get to, and I wanted to say this, that when I was still in my full-time career, I felt stuck, and at least, like, I felt so trapped in the sense that I was working this career that was paying so well, and I should love it because I spent so much time on it. Right. But I saw this other, like, part of me lighting up, and a bigger impact that I wanted to make. But I felt so stuck because I couldn't control my schedule. I couldn't get vacation. I didn't know when my day was going to end, because surgeries would go long. And so what I would do is, every waking moment, I was working on my business, and I was hustling harder, and I was adding new strategies. And it was like, well, if this could get me there in 10 months, if I add 3 things, then that could get me there in 3 months. And so I was just like hustling. And at some point, I had to acknowledge that, number one, nobody was holding a gun to my head making me go to work every day. And so I got to make that decision. Like, I'm choosing to be here. You're not a victim, LaChelle. So let's figure this out. So that's first and foremost, right? So stop making excuses, friends. But the other thing is that I birthed Spiral Up and what I do and the practices that I have now out of necessity, because I literally was burning myself to the ground. As a person who was a high achiever my whole freaking life, had to be at the top of my classes, all the things, did just the same in muting into my business, because I was like, had to be the best, and I had to do it all, and I had to do it faster, and I was completely burning myself out, right? And so what I was able to do is, on this journey for myself, figure out this beautiful combination of what I call the trifecta for massive change, to help me get to where I wanted to go faster. But more than that, to be able to do it with more ease and flow and grace and joy, without overthinking, without burning out. Okay. And that is with my unique combination of quantum physics, brain science, and scripture. And when I have been able to allow for all 3 of those forces to come together, some change can happen in a relatively short period of time, because metaphysically, we are allowing ourselves to be in a higher level of consciousness and a higher level of energetics and frequency that allow for the right opportunities, the people, the things to come into alignment with us, so that it doesn't have to be this desperate energy. It doesn't have to be this constant hustle. It doesn't have to be this constant force. When we start to recognize how we can make that happen faster by utilizing those 3 strategies, things can happen very, very quickly.
Okay. Can we unpack those 3 strategies?
Do it.
A little bit of how if you'll tell us a little bit of how they work in synergy, and then how you use them in your programs and in your coaching.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm just going to start out by just saying that like the framework that I've used is called the flow state money method. And really what it does is incorporate all of this. So one is it's really eliminating toxic thought patterns. Okay. So let's start there. If I have toxic thought patterns that I've allowed for limiting beliefs to impact my confidence, if I've allowed toxic thought patterns to impact my willingness to have courage and have conversations about my business and to launch my business and to do the things, to say yes to the things, to quit my job, right?
Right.
I need to have the correct thought patterns that are going to allow for me to have the clarity versus thinking that I have to stay in this like cyclone of confusion. God is not out of confusion. Right? If I can allow myself to have the right thinking that allows me to not be subject to life, but yet to allow for myself to know that I am capable of taking any situation and rising above it. So that allowing myself of the choice to be empowered versus disempowered, for my thinking to allow myself to have confidence and understanding my limiting beliefs and to shift myself into this space, to allow myself to have the clarity of not only who I am and what makes me special, but also who I serve and how I can do that very efficiently, to have the confidence and the courage to take action, to not talk myself out of, following through the things that because I tell myself that I'm just not good at that, or I'm just, not a follow througher, or blah, blah, blah.
Right.
If I allow myself to have the resiliency in thought to say, like, just because this launch didn't work doesn't mean I suck, or that this is just the way that business goes, or knowing my why and allowing me to stay in high vibes. It allows for me to do 2 things, that thought pattern, okay? Number 1 is it allows me to have the identity in my brain to make decisions that are going to be consistent with the life that I want, not the life that I don't want. Okay?
Yes.
And what happens is we have a couple of different things in our brains. One of them specifically I'll talk about is our reticular activating system. Our RAS is designed for efficiency. And so what it does is it knows who we are at our core as our identity, and it works tirelessly to conserve that. And so it says, this is who I am. And it filters out anything outside that does not align with that. Okay. So I will consistently see things in the outside world to validate that identity. Okay. So if I believe that I'm not worthy of charging more, if I believe that my prices are too high, I will consistently hear a price objection, because my energy is going to put that out there, and then my brain is going to just say, see, your prices are too high. You're not worthy of that. So your brain is literally filtering out all the evidence to contradict that, and it's only going to say this is who you are, and it's going to only pick that thing up. So that's brain wise. The other thing that happens in our brain is when we have toxic thinking is that we will oftentimes worry about things and not see things for what they could be. So there's a part of our brain called the mirror neurons. Mirror neurons cannot tell the difference between what is real and what is imagined. Okay? So let's just pretend that I am about to get on a sales call, and my brain says, because of my beliefs that I've had, and my RAS is going to look for this, that my prices are too high. And this person probably can't afford my prices anyway, and I'm not even worth what I charge anyway, so I don't even know why I'm having this conversation. And I'm already thinking those things. And so my brain is imagining this going poorly. My brain is imagining this person saying no, and no, I can't afford this. Let me think about it. Let me ask my husband, all the other crap that happens, right? Because my brain and my imagination has already pictured what the worst case scenario is.
Yes.
And because my brain cannot tell if that's imaginary or if it's really happening, what's happening then is that my body will start to pick up on those signals and my heart will start to race. I will have sweaty palms. I will have an icky feeling in my stomach. And because I think all of that, it's also diverting, because it's fight or flight, it's diverting blood flow from my brain into my peripheries. So I'm not even thinking straight. So now I'm going into this call with the energy of not thinking straight. I'm feeling, I have like this weird, like restless, desperate energy because of what's going on in my body. And now, of course, the other person's going to be like, yeah, it just doesn't feel right because of that.
Okay? Wow. Okay. Okay.
Interesting part of like why toxic thought patterns are different. Now, let's imagine that if you were able to shift your thought patterns into using your mirror neurons for your benefit. So instead of taking yourself down worst case scenario road, we actually start to envision what would be the best case scenario. We envision ourselves acting as if we are already secured the sale. We are already making millions of dollars, and that we hope this person, sees the value, but if they don't, like, we wish them well.
Right.
From a place of love, not from a place of, like, pushing away, right? We show up with different posture. We show up with different energy because we visualize this person saying, oh my God, I have never hired a coach before, but this feels right. I've been praying for you. And now all of a sudden, me visualizing best case scenario, I am going to step into that sales call with a much different energy, with a much different way I carry myself, right?
Yes.
And I literally have an example of this that happened last week. I met a woman because I was a guest on her podcast, and talked briefly, I think, before or after, and I was like, I might actually be able to help you. I'm going to send you the link to my schedule. If you want to use it, great. If not, great. She got on the call. She had never followed me on social media. She had no idea what my offerings were, like what my program was about, anything. In fact, she had never, ever hired a coach before. But I showed up on the call with the energy, assuming that it was going to go great. And what happened was she's like, I have never hired a coach before, but I want to hire you. Here's my credit card. And I asked her, what made you decide to even book the call with me? And she said, your energy and your positivity. Because I allowed my thought patterns to impact the energy in which I brought to this place. Our thoughts are what create our feelings.
Yes.
Feelings are our action, create our attitude. So if you don't get a handle on your thought, you're going to subconsciously either sabotage or bring your services up to the next level, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so there's so much that can go into that, but that's basically that. So now we're going to take that into the metaphysics part. So the metaphysics part of it is that when I am thinking thoughts that create feelings, it impacts the way in which my body is vibrating. Okay, so if I have to take this down to like 7th grade science for you guys briefly, so you might remember from class back in the old days, we learned that everything is made of atoms.
Yes.
Right? Cool. So atoms are literally just a little tiny nucleus with electrons rotating around it. MIT scientists have been able to measure how fast those electrons in our body are rotating based on our feelings.
Okay.
If I am feeling feelings of love, joy, peace, gratitude, freedom, my electrons are rotating really, really fast.
Okay.
Fast electrons are measured in frequencies or hertz or vibration. So my vibe is high. Makes sense. If I think thoughts that lead to feelings that are like hopelessness, helplessness, despair, victimhood, my electrons rotate slower. My hertz, my frequency, my vibe lower. Okay?
Okay.
So if you know that your thoughts create your feelings, you can actually create a different change in your feelings, therefore your vibration, by thinking better thoughts. Okay? Why does that matter? In metaphysics, there is a law called the law of vibration. Oftentimes people have heard of the law of attraction. It's a subsidiary law of vibration. So what that tells us is that if I were to, at least I'm going to give you this analogy. You and I are about the same age. Do you remember listening to Casey Kasem back in the day? Or are you too young for that?
I
Ryan
don't
Crest?
remember that. Yeah, I don't.
Ryan Crest?
Yes,
Remember
yes.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay, before Ryan Crest, there was Casey Kasem, and I remember
Okay.
listening to Casey Kasem and when I was a kid. And he's in LA in his studio, right? I'm in my little bedroom in Minnesota with my mixtape ready to like record the top 40. Okay, how in the hell am I able to listen to Casey Kasem or Ryan Crest when I'm in Minnesota? It's because I tuned my radio to the frequency of the studio. Yes?
Right. Yes.
Same thing happens in metaphysics. So when my body is vibrating high at a specific frequency, like love, joy, peace, gratitude, which is like 700 hertz,
Yeah.
things that are in alignment with that frequency will start to essentially vibrate and entangle, and all of a sudden I will see them. This is why ideas will pop into my head out of nowhere. This is why all of a sudden I will meet somebody and I'm like, where have you been all my life? This is all of a sudden I'll have a conversation that literally changes everything because I've aligned myself with that frequency of that solution. Versus when I am vibrating in low frequency, I am going to continue to attract clients that don't see the value. They are going to think my prices are too much. I don't continue to follow through because why bother?
Right.
You know what I mean? Duh, my business is going to manifest in that way, right?
Right.
And we have to acknowledge that there is both a brain science and a metaphysics part to this. And then because I have a lot of my clients that have grown up in church like I have, you're like, but wait a minute, LaChelle, where does God fit into all of this? And this is where I love to tweak in the affirmations and the confirmation from scripture. In fact, my entire, flow state money method is based on Romans 12:2.
Nice.
Do not conformed by the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The patterns of this world are the things in low vibration.
Nice.
God vibrates at a higher frequency.
Yeah.
So we can allow ourselves to have the perspective of God. We can start to align with the things. And when we're transformed by the renewing of our minds, we are able to then create a life that is in alignment with His will of our greatest capacity, our greatest level of impact, the reason that we were born. And so, like, it's amazing what happens when you start to, like, really intertwine things, okay? So then the second step to my framework of 3 is to tap into divine supernatural guidance when making your decisions, okay? So the burnout happens when we are chasing after all the strategies, we're doing all of the things, we're frantically doing all the things. When you've allowed for the toxic thought patterns to help you, you're going to stop chasing worthiness through all the things. You're going to start making more confident decisions. But there's a whole other level we can add to this when we start to tap into and ask God for His guidance, okay? There is a universal source, universal intelligence, God, that is here guiding us at all times. If I wake up and I am, minute that I open my eyes, I'm overwhelmed by my to-do list, I am relying on myself to move the needle. Versus if I wake up and I say, okay, I want to know of these things on my to-do list, which one of these am I meant to do today, God? And I learned and I teach my clients how to tap into universal guidance through your subconscious to ask God questions. And I literally can get answers through my body of whether or not I need to do a thing or whether or not I need to put it on my list for tomorrow. And when I put it on my list for tomorrow, oftentimes it gets done by some other factor in the universe. Okay? I also love to teach people how to tap into all of the other universal laws that God uses in order to create things. The law of abundance, the law of vibration, the law of cause and effect. All of these things allow us to make things happen faster instead of doing it on our own. So the analysis I'm going to give is, remember the movie Finding Nemo?
Mm-hmm.
So there, is this, right? We all know that movie where it's like, just keep swimming, and that's what we do, right? We're in the burnout, and we're like, slap a smile on your face, and I'm just keep swimming, right? If Tori just kept swimming, they would never gotten to Sydney. Let's be real. Okay? What happened was there's a very important part of the movie where they crush the turtle. And Crush is just, hey, dude, all you need to do is go to the EAC, and it'll take you right to Sydney. Number one, they had willing to listen to guidance being sent to them. They had to be willing to trust that guidance and get it to the EAC. And now all of a sudden, they're freaking in Sydney without any more effort on their own. That's what quantum manifesting is. That's what quantum leaping is. It's not doing any more. It's literally getting into the God current and letting him shoot you into where you need to go. But it requires you to let go of freaking control. It requires you to trust not only him, but your discernment that you hear him properly, and that your willingness to just let go of freaking pressure, let go of all of the forcing, let go of all of the hustle, because that drags you down to low vibration, and you're literally working against you.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you get into the God current, you're allowing yourself to just release control and let him guide you so that you can get more done with less time. And you will start to see business manifesting with more joy and flow and ease and joy than you've ever had before, because you're not forcing it anymore. Okay? So that's step 2. Step 3 in the full state money method is to get into a line inspired action. This is part of the manifestation equation of saying that I must act as if it's already here.
Yes.
I cannot sit on my couch and expect that my doorbell's going to ring and my ideal client is going to show up saying, where have you been all my life? Here's my credit card. That's crap. Yes? We have to do our part. And that doesn't mean that you have to get stuck in the old patterns of doing all the things. It means that you have tapped into the last step, which is asking for guidance, and then you doing your part. If you say, if you're being led to say yes to this opportunity, it means you do it. If it means that you're being led to start the podcast, you execute.
Yes.
Being led to launch the damn thing, you launch the thing. And so sometimes that means that you have to be brave and all the things, but it also means that you have to tap into other tools that you teach, Alyece, which is how can I get into action in a way that allows me to work smarter, not harder. That means allowing myself to delegate. It means allowing myself to automate. It means allowing myself to get organized and learn how to function from my unique, human design and brain, neuro ways that my brain wants to work and all the things. But it means that you get into action. And when we talked at the very beginning of our conversation about the I am, it means that I am stepping into the action from a place of it's already happened. I am trusting that not only God can, but that God will. And I am going to take steps expecting that it is the right steps that I need to take to allow for the receiving part of the invitation to get to me. And it really doesn't have to be more complicated than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so much of what you talked about, obviously we relate to as ADHD entrepreneurs, my audience, of, the way we talk to ourselves and that fear of rejection, and then allowing that spiral to happen of continuing to tell ourselves these thoughts. But then the brain science behind it is just absolutely incredible to understand how your brain is set up to protect you. And there's a lot of medical case studies and things about how ADHD brains work differently, but, looking at the actual mapping of how a brain is built, regardless, everyone's brain is trying to protect themselves. And the way we act, if it's not with intention, like you said, not designing our day, designing our life, designing our energy, it's incredible. It's incredible. So, and you actually, your book, everything you kind of explained in the spiritual portion of, getting out of God's way, the title of your book, right? You guys, I'll have that definitely linked in the show notes. But you and I had talked recently about, executing that book and how you knew you were called to write this book. And for 6 days, you practically didn't move to get this book done. And it really just shows when you are so rooted in what you're called to do, no matter how your brain functions differently, it still boils down to self-talk and executing. Would you agree?
100%. And I think that in the middle of that was getting into flow with God. So I literally felt like in a lot of things, and in ADHD world, like we consider that flow state because we're so hyperactive, focused. But really it's both of that. It's the and, the hyper focus, and getting into complete download mode, because I believe that I was the messenger of the message,
right?
Allowed to come in. And so it was like, all right, let's do this. But then like I had to have the confidence to think, well, who am I to write a book? So I had to get all that stupid thinking out. I had to get in alignment to allow him to write through me. And then I had to not be so scared, and I had to get into action to launch it to become a bestseller. Right? And so it doesn't have to be hard.
No, it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be hard. And, you know, obviously that is what you teach and coach on. So tell me a little bit about your Spiral Up program. What do you do in there with your students? And I know, but share it with us here, because there's so many pieces of what you said today that you help people put into action. It's not just talk. It's not just words in a book. Like, you are executing this with them. So give us a little bit of behind the scenes of the Spiral Up program.
Yeah. So my signature level of Spiral Up is the Spiral Up Success Club. And that allows for people to have access to what I call my foundations of success. So it's all of the things that I teach people to use brain science, quantum physics, and scripture to have this baseline of what you need to have long-time sustainable change. Because once you can get to the root of the stuff, like, everything else is going to click, right? And it doesn't mean years of therapy. It doesn't mean, you know, doing circles, dances in the moonlight to be spiritual. Like, for real, like, there are ways that we can use brain science and quantum physics and scripture to get us there. So that's what that is. It also allows for them to have weekly group coaching that we can get to the root and execution. But I don't believe that it has to be like, you learn first and then you execute. You get clarity from action, and it's really just this beautiful dance of walking alongside of each other, recognizing when there are toxic thought patterns and shifting them, recognizing when we're not tapping into spiritual guidance, recognizing when we're not taking action, and finding ways to bust through those butts in real time. I kind of call myself a butt buster, because it's really like, what are the butts that are in the way from you being a freaking badass, amazing businesswoman and person, right? And sometimes it's belief and thinking. Sometimes it's a legitimate, like, I can't figure this out with my schedule. Sometimes it's, I don't know what to do. But when we can allow ourselves to figure out the butts while we're in motion, we can keep ourselves in massive forward momentum, figuring it out as we go.
Yes. And, you know, that has been, I think that is one of the things my audience struggles with a lot, is thinking you need to know everything up front, right? And you just said figuring it out as you go. And as someone with ADHD, I know, and again, I know my audience can relate to that, is that I very often want everything done, everything complete. I want to, you know, in a binder, in a packet, like, ready to deliver. That is not how life works. That is not how business works. You know, and I've seen that in, you know, in being a mom. I've seen that in entrepreneurship. And if you guys leave here with anything, I mean, I hope you took a ton of notes. If you didn't, you're going to want to download this episode and come back, because LaChelle is a wealth of knowledge on not only her special framework, but how to have that mindset and have that clarity and design a life for you, right? That you get to live. But know that you will not know everything up front, and you don't need to. You don't need to.
You don't.
And she and I believe in surrounding ourselves with powerful people that feed our energy and bring the best out in us, you know, in networking and growing who you communicate with and helping and serving each other. That is just, it's just powerful. I mean, that's how you and I met, like we said, in the coaching program, and we've connected on multiple things since then. And
yes.
Gosh, it's just,
and it's so much fun, because, like, you know, you're part of my Spiral Up program. You're one of my experts, and Alyece gets to work with my high level clients that are one-on-one with me. But they also, my Success Club people, get access to her masterclass trainings. And what's so cool is that we're able to customize this, not because you can't customize things, you guys, if you get caught up into all the modules. You can be watching the modules, but you also have to get on the coaching calls and be in action to get the customization. But you can't just sit back and learn and not figure out how to apply it to yourself without getting into action.
Agreed.
Your butts are going to show up because you're in action. And I love that I get a chance to direct people to you when I recognize that ADHD is a butt that has been in our way of massacre.
Yes, I will call all your butts out. And I mean that in multiple ways. Not only the butts you're telling yourself, but your ass, because I'm telling you right now, I can't tell you how many students I've had in my programs, even before I completely, dialed in to the embodiment of my own ADHD, that were like, well, I'm so ADHD. And I'm like, sis, me too. Like, hashtag me too. But seriously, like, that is not a reason. The reason is fear. The reason is the way you're talking to yourself. There's a lot of other reasons. 9 times out of 10, it boils down to fear. And 9 times out of 10, if your content's not converting, it's confidence. And confidence you're not born with it. It comes from action. It comes from building
100%.
momentum.
And one of the things that you just said, I just want to say really quickly, is that if you told yourself that I have ADHD, therefore I have the permission to have this excuse, this is what's been happening, guys, that you've allowed that identity to give your reticular activating system permission to continue to find proof to validate your victim story. And if you're feeling stuck, and until you decide that you no longer want to hold that identity as something that is your handicap, instead you want to be like, because I have ADHD, I have this superpower, and now I am taking on the identity as the person that I get to be and want to be. You will start to not only make better decisions, but your reticular activating system will start to now find evidence of that identity and you'll freaking be unstoppable.
Yes. I had to take a note. Like, I had to get a pen to write down the word permission in all caps and then underline it and outline it. And that will be on a quote graphic for this episode, because that is exactly, like, sometimes I struggle to find the way to describe it because I live it so much, but that is exactly it. Is you're giving yourself permission to allow it to be an excuse. Period. Okay. So I wanna wrap it up there, because that was like mic drop moment. Is there anything else you would give, knowing that my audience is, ADHD entrepreneurs, and there are a lot of struggles that come with that. They're all manageable. They're not a handicap. They're a superpower. Like, the things that I'm talking about weekly. Is there any kind of words of wisdom you would leave with?
I think that it's really just comes down to what we just said, is that you can choose. That superpower is our free will, our choice. You can either choose to be a victim or you can choose to be a victor. It literally is your choice.
Yeah.
So you can choose to keep this excuse and it let be your big ass butt, or you could allow it to be your freaking superpower that allows you to be amazing and special and deliver the most transformation possible. Yeah. But you have to choose that. And that's what I'm going to leave you with, is that what are you choosing today? And is it consistent with the life you want, or is it consistent with the life you don't? And if it's not, then you need to call out that button.
All right, y'all. You heard it. Okay. So I will make sure that the show notes have all the information for you to check out Dr. LaChelle's Spiral Up program. Connect with her on IG or Facebook or wherever you're hanging out. I'm sure she's there as well. She's got an absolutely amazing team that works with her too, that makes sure she is, everywhere she needs to be and able to be in her zone of genius, which I love and I admire so much, because that is something that we talk about a lot, is being in that zone of genius. And so you definitely gave us just a little small chunk of yours today. So I thank you so much for being here with us. And if you're listening to this episode, make sure you take a screenshot, throw it in your stories, tag us. I'll make sure her handles are all in the show notes. But we want to hear, not that you're just here listening, that you're going to take action from what you heard today. Because today you got an entire lecture, not a lecture, a conversation, but from a doctor. I said lecture because she is a doctor and she knows what the hell she's talking about. Okay, so I look at this like, okay, there's me having a conversation, and then there's Dr. LaChelle up here actually giving you like brain science. So you got a lot of information today that you won't hear anywhere else. And that is valuable. So take action with it. Okay, take action with it. And until next time, make it simple, make it social, make it awesome.